Mark doesn't go change the schedule anyway. Our parking lot is twice a day for.
Yeah, it costs money.
I did an exercise with the police department one time on how easy it was to find information. So I went online because they all think their. I went online and I found all of their information. And
I think you're frank.
Joel, how many copies did you want?
no, not even you. I found you. You're not on the your wife is and your brother is.
No.
My wife,
There you go.
There we go. We'd like to welcome everyone out to our city council this evening. We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance by Councilwoman Petty and then a prayer by Councilman Soderquist.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our most gracious Father in heaven, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet this evening, grateful for this wonderful community in which we live and the good people here, the good staff and emergency personnel. We're grateful for all their efforts and dedication. We pray for the guidance to be with us tonight. We'll be able to understand clearly the opportunities and issues that are before us. We may be able to make wise decisions. I'm grateful for a little bit of moisture now and continue to pray for more moisture to help us with the coming needs this year. And this we ask for now in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. So this meeting this evening is going to be a workshop type meeting. We won't have any comments, public comments today. We felt like with the drought situation that we're in and with the water conditions and the restrictions that we're possibly looking at here in the very near future, we felt like we needed to hold this meeting and discuss those items as to where South Weber is going to go and the direction that we need to have so that we can let the citizens know soon enough so that they can plan on their summer activities and just what might take place here in the city. So we'll turn the time over to Dave. He's going to lead us in this discussion and we'll go from there. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. The city received a letter that I forwarded on to all of you a couple of weeks ago from Weber Basin Water, which kind of necessitated this conversation. And they hinted at if things don't change, they didn't hint, they've stated directly that if things don't change, then there's a list of restrictions that they're considering and would implement, including things like delaying the secondary system charge, as well as an early shutoff, limiting watering outdoors to 1 day a week, having no new landscapes be put in, things like that. And so we put a series of questions in the background memo for you. And I think the easiest thing would be is to just ask those questions one at a time and kind of go through that. And then if there are additional comments, additional things that the council feels like we need to address as far as water to be out in front of this, then we obviously have the ability to talk through all of those other items as well. But I think those questions hopefully are questions that can allow some dialogue and some conversation around what we want to do as a city in the face of these potential restrictions and just the drought conditions that we have. So with that, the first question, let me pull that up here. The first question essentially is, how do we want to support our secondary water companies? There are 4 secondary water companies in the city. For reference, there are some citizens, some residents in South Weber that cannot be on secondary. There are 20 accounts that we have of citizens that do not have access to secondary. So they use our city culinary water system in order to water outdoors. So there's 20 of those accounts. There are additionally 31 accounts of residents that do have access to secondary water and choose not to use secondary water. They pay a different rate than those that do not have the option. So there is that category of 51 accounts, 51 residents that are like that. However, all the rest are part of a secondary company. And so we are not the ones that would be putting those restrictions for their watering. The secondary companies would be doing that. So the first question is, how do we support that? And how do we want to approach those companies in the situations that they're going to have? And maybe it's best to turn directly to Blair, because he's as close to the secondary water company as anybody in this room. And maybe he can give some help on the approach that the companies are going to take.
I'll defer to Mark.
Turn the water off, we're good. Whatever we can do to help the secondary companies. Our staff is public works. We're just gonna try to keep the trees alive this year.
Okay.
There's no water to keep the grass green, it's gonna be brown. Resign ourselves to that, but we're trying to keep the trees alive.
Is that mostly through a drip system, or is that how
We'll just have to water.
water 'em?
So are the 4 secondary water companies all under Weber Basin Water?
No.
They're not connected with them at all?
Well, I think,
no.
yeah.
I think 3 of the 4 are. Is that right, Brandon? Is it 3 or is it 2?
So,
No, Blair can answer. That's why I went to him first.
well, I was gonna answer, Brent, but, no, you have a mixture. You have some that own their own water rights straight out of the river, which is, I know, the west end. I think it's a mixture of partial water rights and partial purchased water from Weber Basin. Anything that comes out of the canal is kind of a mixture of both. And so it's kind of convoluted. None of them are tied. More of them are tied to Davis Weber Canal and their own secondary water versus Weber Basin. We typically follow the state recommendations, and Weber Basin usually leads the charge on that because they're the biggest organization. So the restrictions will be very similar regardless of what company it is, I think, though, because we're all trying to meet the same end goal.
South Ogden gets some of their water from Pine View. We don't get any, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, I mean, go to your first question, and I've tried to figure out this a little bit, but a lot of it is just more of the education is how you can support the secondary water companies. And Kim's done a great job as far as educating and who they contact and where they go. Some of the secondary water companies are more sophisticated than others. Some have websites you can refer them to, some don't. It's kind of getting, I think one of the only things I can think of that would help maybe is if through our website and some of those things, we probably need to get or request that maybe all the secondary companies get on the same page for their restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I thought, I didn't know if any of them were coming tonight or what you had done, but it would be maybe a good thing to facilitate as a city, a meeting amongst those. Because most people don't even know who's who and what. I mean, we communicate with Wendy Dahl a lot, but that's because I know her and she's easy. But before she was in there was no communication between the irrigation companies. And so some of that and getting on the same page and having that published through the city's information would help a bunch, because none of them are updated. Even the Weber River Water Users website, the last time it was updated was 2018. And so you have to go to Davis Weber Canal to get, well, even what those restrictions are and getting into some of that. So that's the most I think the city can do, except for the parks and trying to decide what we do with the parks. The problem with the parks is we've always asked parks, churches, farmers to water during the day. And I guess that I didn't know if that was going to be one of the topics we talked about, is when should because I'm still not opposed to allowing the parks currently on our system, the west side, to watering twice a week. We just got to decide what time, because I don't think I think as the runoff starts, the west end of town at least will have water. Because it's coming directly out of the river. It's not coming from a storage area. It's runoff water. And so I don't think it makes a difference whether it does make a difference, don't get me wrong, but we're only taking the runoff water. We're not taking the baseline of the river. So I don't have a problem with the parks having an initial water period, and that gets into more discussion when we get to the park. But it's more support from the city and education on where to send the citizens. So,
Well, you bring up a really important point just about the nature of secondary water and pressurized irrigation. And I've seen this in lots of cities where being a big user and the churches, institutional uses are requested to act a little bit differently than a standard residential home because of the nature of needing to balance the system. Even the idea of it makes water-wise sense to have everybody water at night, but to balance a pressurized system, you can't have everybody draw at the same time. And so there's usually a request to have big users water during the day, even though that's less efficient from, a water-wise standpoint. It's necessary from a system standpoint. And so education becomes a really important piece of how cities use water and how we are going to water parks or not water parks, or just what our actions are as an example. Yet sometimes our requests are different from secondary companies. So that education piece will be really, really important, I think, in whatever decisions are made.
yeah. And from our standpoint, there's like Canyon Meadows, it's a lot, especially if we do finish the phase, it's a lot of water. It takes it's almost more than you can get done between 10 and 6, which is their watering hours.
It is already.
Yeah, it already is. And we're adding that many more zones. And so the other option we do have is most irrigation companies aren't watering the days of the week. We're holding off watering on Sundays or Sunday nights, all day Sunday night, and you start again Monday. But, and that was to mainly allow them to cut down the flow in the river and allow them to hold more water in the reservoirs on that one day a week. But that didn't happen last year. They kept the same flow. So if we stay to the same schedule and they stay to the same flow, that's a night we could water from the cities.
You described, Blair, the idea that you're looking at from at least one company to have 2 days a week, where Weaver Basin has suggested 1 day. That idea of having all the secondary companies
On the same page.
Same page, it may be difficult. But even if it is, you're suggesting, or what I'm hearing you suggest, is that specific to Canyon Meadows Park, there's still potentially water options there for the city.
Yep.
Well, there's some stuff we can get hanging out, see if I add another meter on the output side of the pump, then I can stack the zones. So 2, 3, or 4 of them can be out at the same time, as long as there's no pressure. But I have to put a pressure transducer on the output side.
Mhm. Yeah.
The new, like I said, there's a lot of stuff we can do. The new
Sure.
smart controllers. We can get everybody in town, I don't know, on our website, push the smart controllers, push water-wise landscaping. It's just gonna be a paradigm shift. But Kentucky bluegrass isn't the thing that's gonna happen anymore.
Yep.
I mean, it just is what it is. Not what we're doing our part down there. I mean, we can't put sod this spring very well. So, things that are on hold for a minute. Anyway, there's a lot of.
So if they're allowing us 1 day a week, say, did you say you're gonna?
Well,
do
that's the
2?
thing, is the state has not come down from the water rights department yet that we've seen or been notified that it's 1 day a week. Weaver Basin is saying that they may enforce 1 day a week, and you go on their website and they're recommending 1 day a week. Davis Weaver Canal, they're meeting on Thursday to discuss they haven't even decided their water schedule yet, to try to divide out how many shares each how many CFS each share has, and all of that. I don't think Kaysville's met yet. Brandon, have you received a notice down that? I mean,
No.
there's a lot of companies that have not, because we were waiting through this time to see what the snowpack was.
Mhm.
And right now we're at 77% snowpack. We were in December at 130%, and we dropped because we didn't get snow for so long. but we're at 77%, but we've also got better water in the ground than we did last year. We have about the same snowpack this time, but we have more water in the ground, but less in the reservoirs, obviously, as everybody knows. So that's the weird scenario you have. If you live off a runoff water, you're probably sitting okay. If you're living off of storage water as an irrigation company, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So, sorry. I was just thinking maybe if we can't get all of them together to be on the same page, we can at least facilitate in providing that information on our website of where your secondary water company is located, which one you would fall under. And I know we have that already. And then these are the restrictions in case it's too difficult to get. It sounds like each of these are unique in their own way. So maybe getting them all on the same page might be too much to ask, but at least we can get all the information on our website.
I think we'd be very close, because last year we've never been on restrictions in South Weaver like this before. Last year, our restrictions were to 3 days a week, and we got on the same page last year. And that's why I said we were talking about going to 2 days a week. We had never heard 1 day a week until we received the same letter as an irrigation company from Weaver Basin making that recommendation. But they also live on storage water, pretty much 100%.
I saw head nods when Blair suggested the idea of facilitating a meeting with all the companies. Is that universal? The council wants us to proceed that way? To try to set
I
up
think
a,
it'd be pretty easy to put
meeting.
together.
yeah, that wouldn't be difficult.
Yeah, I think it would be good. I think probably after they all know exactly what they're gonna do.
And I don't even know if you need to, really it's 3. I don't think you would need, unless you want them there for an education standpoint, because they're so involved in it. But Davis Weaver Canal is going to decide what they're going to do by their board Thursday, and you're going to know what they're going to do. You're not going to have, and they won't change it either. And so, and they're the smallest. They probably serve 25 to 30 houses.
Mhm.
So it's really the South Weaver Improvement District. And what's the other?
Weaver
Well,
Basin.
oh, yeah.
Weaver Basin, South Weaver
Yeah,
Improvement, and then yours.
yeah.
What's yours called?
South Weaver Irrigation Company.
South Weaver Irrigation.
Used to be the ditch.
Used to be
Yeah.
the Dun Ditch.
Yeah.
So just some clarification, and I should know this, but I don't, are the city parks on secondary water from all these different companies? So
Mhm.
each park is different?
Everything's not cleared on secondary except this building here.
Right, so we can't set a citywide thing if all the
Well,
companies aren't on the same page.
yeah, that's why I'm making the recommendation for that.
We can have our own.
Yeah, we-
On our website, just your secondary thing, and then we have a map, click on where you live and your restrictions, wherever they are.
Yeah, we tend to experience phone calls frequently on that, right? People call the city asking secondary questions and we refer them to the appropriate company.
Right.
I think the other element of this that wasn't necessarily one of the questions, but is probably related, that if there are restrictions, who's the quote unquote water police? And the city is not the water
No.
police. We're not the
The wa-
ones that are imposing the
water master is
restrictions,
the-
right? The water master.
The water master is your code enforcement type guy.
Yeah. So again, that would be information that the city can
That's
do
not
to
me.
support the companies.
No.
Well, I
Got a
guess,
little badge and everything.
Yeah.
I guess the question I have though is that, from my memory of last year and the restrictions, when we did get cut down so much on the secondary, we had a lot of people that then turned to culinary.
That's where I was.
That's
yeah,
right.
You're exactly right.
And we're gonna,
While we're talking about this, I mean, yeah, when they enact this, we're sitting in a position where we really don't have any type of code or enforcement or plan to do it, as they start draining culinary water, so that, you know, they can have their garden done or their yard done. So I think, yes, education has got to be number one. I wonder if we don't follow the suit of other cities around that have started to put in, you know, kind of a tiered approach of when it gets to this level, this is what the city then also turns as a response, you know, something where, you know, you obviously can't water hard surfaces, you know, you can't do all of these different kind of things, because we don't just want a quick change to take all of the culinary, because that affects all of us. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
We have a tiered rate.
we have a tiered
Tiered
rate,
rates,
but not like a fine or anything. But that was, you hit exactly what, so just an example, last year, so the water was delayed coming on a couple weeks.
Uh-huh.
And you have a whole bunch of new homes going on. Well, their landscape contractor still went ahead and put in sod, and it was not just one home, it was 20 homes with a hose bib connection, and they're watering their lawn with no backflow preventers, no stop and waste, no, right off a hose bib into their, and so we would go and give them a warning or whatever as an irrigation company, but you have no way, I mean, you have no teeth whatsoever. And so really, I think it should, if we get, and the city knows what the restrictions are of the areas, I think it should become a code enforcement, and the city needs to make it a policy that there is zero watering other than those ones that are already set up that don't have it. I think there should be a penalty enforced if you're watering your lawn with secondary or culinary water. It's one thing to go water your shrubs or your garden with a hose or whatever to keep your, but to go water your lawn when you're under a restriction like this, and there was a lot of homes, not just a few.
How can you enforce that?
That's my question.
How would you, I mean,
It's gonna, you would have to,
You're gonna have to go to their house, open their box, look at their water.
no, if they're watering, well,
They're watering.
if they're watering when the water's shut off,
There's
you
water.
know.
Yeah, I guess.
They're watering other than.
I mean,
the day that they can
I mean,
water, you know.
there's a home right over here that watered all the way up until it was freezing ground.
Yeah. Those you can pick up.
You know, yeah, you're not gonna pick them all up, but I think you can make a citywide policy that that's just flat not allowed.
Well, and most, I think most South Weaver residents, if you tell them, this is the policy and, you know, there's going to be enforcement, most of all of them are going to go, you know what, that's fine. I understand the need for it. I'll back off like everybody else. I mean, there will be the one or two that are going to go for, you know,
Yeah.
the green award of the year, but I think most people understand the severity that we're facing right now, so. I don't like it, but.
I agree. I think the main thing is to let them know that they can't do it. I've talked to several since this has come out, and then they say, well, that's easy. I'm just gonna start using culinary water, you know, not realizing that they both come out of the same pond, you know. We just need to make them aware of that and that they can't do that, and I think we'll be okay. And you're gonna have the one or two that
Yeah, to your point, Mayor, that's very important, and maybe as part of our education, it's not that there's one source of culinary water and a separate source of secondary water. The difference, they come from the same source, and at some point, culinary is treated and put into the culinary system,
Right.
and secondary is put in the secondary system. But it's not two separate
Two separate
sources,
sources.
and culinary has got tons of water and secondary doesn't.
I think a lot of
Water
people-
is water.
I think there's those that think it's separate, and I think we need to make them aware of that. And then back to the watering days, I mean, is this possible that maybe we would have to get the okay from like Weaver Basin or these different districts? If they say, okay, everybody waters on Wednesday or on Thursday, is it possible that we could get approval from them that the city could then water on a day that everybody else is not watering? That would allow us then to water at night or after 6, so that, you know, we're not.
Any day that works, oh, it's just a matter of adjusting the clock, so it doesn't matter what day it is.
I think we should look at
I mean,
that.
if other than what Weaver Basin said, if the two other irrigation companies stayed on the same schedule, either like, you know, a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, and we were a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, whatever, Thursday, Saturday, that's what used to be. We never had an approved day to water on Sundays, but it looks like it may, if we go to 2 days a week or we go to 1 day a week, there's going to be a lot of other days we could say the city, okay, you water on this day.
Yeah, I think that's.
And if you go on to Davis Weaver Canals, they're right now at 2 days a week is what is listed, and they have them on certain days, and there's 2 other days a week that they're not watering on. So that could be a city day.
I think
Or-
it, I know with my watering company last year, they had us 2 days a week. And they had the berm for the gravel pits going during the day. And then they got so many complaints on that, being like, why are they watering during the hottest part of the day? So they moved them at night and we all lost pressure.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing to consider is whenever the pit does their berm, if our parks are doing it at the same time, everybody lost pressure and then nobody was getting water. So something to consider too.
Undersized, that system has a ton of problems.
It does.
It's undersized, oversold, mismanaged, just forever, and so it's too small pipes, not enough water, and too many people on it. So really, whatever they do, it's gonna be a real coordinated effort.
Yeah.
However they wanna work it, like I said, we can definitely work with it.
Yeah. That's why if the city moves tonight, it has to be on a night that no one else is watering.
Right.
Or it's gonna be that's why we have them during the middle of the day now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just think that one's the biggest system. From what I understand, that one's the biggest system. And so I don't know I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if there'd be a time that wouldn't be watering except for Sundays. And it seems like people are still watering on Sundays even then. But I do know we all lost pressure and then it was just bad for all of us.
So I think the only way to come up with a day or a different schedule for them is finding out what all the water companies are going to do.
Yeah, all of this starts with what are the water companies' restrictions. What I've heard universally is we will support our various secondary water companies' restrictions in our different parks throughout the city that are on different secondary systems, but we will support those secondary companies in their restrictions and follow what we can. Now, Mark's always had good relationships with the various companies and been able to work with them year to year on what, our parks need to do to be good users within those systems. So that will all continue and we'll make sure that we're good stewards of the water that we use as an institutional use.
I think the education is go farther than just what they use for water. Needs to go, we live in a desert. Water, they feel water audit if you have leaks. Now they're starting to meter the secondary, they pick up a lot, but before people wouldn't fix it in the secondary. No reason to.
Yeah.
The water in the sidewalk, stuff like that. I mean, education goes a lot farther than fines and.
Yeah.
They even found when they were doing odd even days, they were using more water. Because you're gonna trip me every other day, I water 3 times as much on the days I can.
Right.
So if we can educate and just that paradigm switch,
If we can if you go on to Weaver Basins and we put some of the links on, especially for our new homes, that talks about the types of sprinklers and types of lawns and they have all sorts of information.
Well, they'll come out and do water.
Yeah,
I did a
they'll
water
actually-
audit on my yard
Yeah, I
last
mean,
year.
I've printed off a ton off of their website today and they even have sprinkler reference guides and then how to monitor and leak detection systems and all sorts of things and it actually is, some of them are cheaper systems to put in than the old, I don't want to use, the big Rainbird type.
Yeah.
Mhm.
With our new landscape ordinance, that's a requirement of all developers to give that information out when they sell a home.
I had just a question on the 31 accounts that have secondary but choose not to in our own culinary. Is that something that we need to push them into secondary, or is that
They pay essentially a penalty for that. They pay a different rate for it. It hits them in the pocketbook.
What is the reason that they don't want to use secondary?
I don't know. It could vary account to account. I don't.
Some of them don't want to share.
So a lot of those are in Heather Cove. And the land was, no offense to anyone in the room, the land was allowed to develop without water rights. So, correct, Brandon?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
That was before my time.
But they have, but they have all been given the opportunity to rent water. But they have to pay the connect to it, so
Right.
they have to go out in the street. Some of them have actually had, some of those 31 have stubs into their yard even. They just don't want to pay the connection fees and stuff. And it's just like any connection fee, and it's not cheap either. That's why it's a money, they're $2,500 to connect to most water lines. So
I think I know the answer to this one, but is South Weaver unique in that the city doesn't control secondary water?
no.
Most cities are the same way.
There
Secondary
are a
water
lot of
company is
cities.
separate.
There are a lot of cities that do provide their own secondary water. They are the secondary system provider.
Would South Weaver City like to do that?
$100 million.
No.
I vote,
No.
should I make a motion?
Yeah, no. No, I would not recommend that.
I think South
Please.
Weaver's unique that we have so many companies that we deal with. Yeah.
No, Blair could be the water master.
My other volunteer,
Whole city.
my other volunteer job.
You have something, Brandon?
I was just gonna say, there are, like, Layton City has a good portion of their city that does not have a secondary system. They're
Mhm.
just all culinary. So, sometimes that's not totally bad because it all runs through the meter, and sometimes I think people are a little more vigilant that way when they don't have a secondary system because it hits them in the pocketbook. And it has been for years, and so they tend to have fixed their leaks and do those types of things. I think the systems where there's been no meter, yeah, they just are used to using whatever they want.
And I might
So we
be-
got to correct that.
I might be getting off topic, but I thought the legislature put aside several $1 million for metering of secondary water. So do those secondary water companies have to go fight for that themselves?
Yes.
Yes, and it's gonna
It's gonna be a
bankrupt.
battle.
Yeah.
It's gonna be.
It's gonna
be
cost
difficult.
your, South Weaver citizens a lot of money.
All-
Yeah, it's that part, retrofitting old systems to do all of that is a big deal. Already in place is any new home going in has a meter. So we're making sure that goes forward, but to go back and retrofit. And I think a lot of, like what Blair had said earlier, or maybe it was Mark, a lot of these secondary systems weren't really master planned very well. And so they've got small pipes, and to put the demand of every single person on that system overnight ends up with a lot of people just irrigating right around the heads, and that's it. And to me, that feels like that's just a waste. So there are a host of different ways you could approach this. And so there's not a silver bullet that takes care of everything. We just got to do our best to, I guess, take whatever measures we can.
So is that one that's not going to be able to be fixed though? I mean, if I'm the water district, I definitely don't want to spend a couple mil just to upgrade pipes. But is that something that the city can slowly start to require as things go in, or is it, this is what we're stuck with for forever?
Well, the way that development happens is that it's the companies. Each of these companies get to review new developments going in, and they make whatever requirements of the developer to put that in. But if your backbone is insufficient, there's nothing you can do about that unless you charge fees and go in and do a project.
Do we see a time where, because if this continues on and all indications say that this year's going to be like last year and next year kind of the same, we're hoping for more, but there's some reality here. Do we see a time when secondary water companies will say, okay, you know what, we're limited so much now from the wholesaler above us and going all the way that we won't be able to have secondary water in parts of South Weaver? No? Okay.
Not in South Weaver, I don't believe. From a South Weaver irrigation standpoint on the west end, your shares in your water, your usage is based on the acreage that you have to develop. And so you have, unless the river dries up, which could happen.
Yeah.
But you should have enough to have a secondary provider, whether that will be the same type of secondary provider without, limited restrictions, and you're going to have meters and you're going to have restrictions and you're going to be billed by usage in the future. By 2030, every secondary company has to have a usage billing.
Yeah.
And it's not just to open, you just use your water. So
Okay.
it will change, but I don't know as far as on this side of it, but the way I understand some of our other farms and stuff here in the center of the city, they have enough water to come off of the canal and other things.
So water is definitely a detailed and complex situation for sure. The third question that we have is what we as a city should do for those culinary residents that have to use culinary for outside watering. Staff suggests that we kind of play in line with the secondary companies and have whatever restrictions are put in place there, that we would match those and have the similar type of restrictions for those culinary users. But that again is something up to the council.
Well, but one of the things, I mean, we're talking about that small group that has it, but when we talk about culinary, now we've also kind of changed the program. We've got a very large water user coming in this spring, the car wash. And as I've been watching other cities, they've enacted a lot of different codes to make sure that car washes, number one, I think with Cedar and of course St. George down south, they put a moratorium. There's no more car washes coming into their city just because of the water that's used by it. And so when we talk about people using culinary, we got to look at the commercial side of things too. And they're definitely going to be using a lot. And whether we want to, if things get worse, not obviously, you know, as everyone's being able to use it, but as things start getting worse, I've seen them put down, I want to say 35 gallons per car, because they actually use quite a bit less than, say, like somebody just going and spraying off their car. But that way they've limited, or they've shut down some of the self cleaning bays and things as things get worse. And I don't know, that's again going back to a tiered approach. Do we want to, with the culinary side of it, if things get to a water emergency, like a lot of these cities are calling it, where does that go? Do we start enacting some actual controls on the commercial side of things? It's a question for all of you.
I can answer that a little bit, that they will still pay the same, they'll be on the tiered rate just like anybody else, because they're going to be a higher user. And they are definitely a higher user than maybe, you know, some other commercial use, because that is their primary, you know, need.
Yeah.
But some of these car washes are pretty efficient with the use of the water, you know, per vehicle versus.
Well, they have the recycling.
Right,
Right.
right.
Do we know, this one does is what?
Yes.
On his automatic base.
Yes.
On its automatic ones? So the other ones don't, the
I don't-
self-service?
I'm not sure.
I don't know on the self-serve base.
Yeah.
I
That might have
would
been
think
why the other
not.
cities were shutting them down, because I know that they talked about like a 70% recouping of water, being able to reuse some of that. But they were still shutting down the self-serve bays. So.
Sure. I guess all I'm trying to say is that they'll pay the highest rate that the city has on their tier, because they're going to obviously go to that highest end.
Right,
so
but is that a
in a way
control?
Sorry, what?
But is that a control? Because the highest end, I don't know what the dollar value is, but I've also seen where cities are now doing that, where if that top tier is using a ton of water, whether, you know, whenever the purpose of it is, that they actually do pay a more restrictive amount, purposely trying to change behavior, not just, you know, make money off of it. And changing behavior through rates and taxes is not something I like. But at the same time, I don't know if we get to more and more restrictions, how far that goes. Because I don't know. Everybody else is looking into it, at least, so I think we ought to.
So I have a question. If we were to do some sort of restrictions, like we've been mentioning, is that something that must be codified, or is that something that we can implement the way we did certain things during the pandemic, or how does that work exactly?
I think that's a good question. I would lean to Jamie to find out exactly what he feels. I think there are different methods for that kind of thing, and so we'd want to talk to him about which is the right one.
Well, I don't even know if the rest of the council even considers that an option. I mean, I don't want to speak for the council, and I'm just telling you what other cities are doing, and they're passing these real quickly right now. Some of them did them last year at the end of it. And I don't know our water situation enough, if that's a concern for us, but I did find one, and this was really kind of interesting to me and kind of scary. St. George was talking, and this is a quote from their city manager. It says, this number is very important to us right now, 3,490. It's the elevation at which the Glen Canyon Dam will no longer generate electricity. right now. Another really important number is 3,525. That's the level of Lake Powell today. 3,490, so 35 feet difference. They will no longer be able to generate electricity either. So I think to keep those things going, I mean, we could actually see the state step in and do some very draconian type of restrictions, but I don't know. I'm bringing it really, up to the council. You guys, is it important as a philosophy that we as a city want to try to restrict water as we get into these emergencies, or is that something we just want to leave to the state? I don't know. It's a
I
philosophy.
think it was something that we would leave to the district, like Weber Basin. Weber Basin's gonna come out and say.
Well, they'll do
no
it for
car
the
washes,
secondary.
or I
Well,
think
but
they'll
no,
do the
they're
same
your-
thing.
They're your
that's true.
culinary
I
too.
think
That's
if it
true.
gets severe enough, they're gonna come out and stop car washes and whatever else they
Well, and
can.
And I think a lot of the cities are, I mean, look at how many, I probably see 5 bid notices a week for a new car wash
Yeah.
across just our valley. I mean, I think cities are getting inundated with those large car washes. I don't know that we have that issue unless we think we're going to, but I think it is a valid concern that we don't want to all of a sudden have 2 or 3 more in South Weber, but I don't think we're going to. But to answer your question, Dave, those secondary water, the culinary water users, you're basically using Weber Basin water, though. You pretty much have to follow Weber Basin's policies, in my mind, for water. Not necessarily if the other secondary systems come up with another one. I think those need to follow. The problem you're going to have is they're not, like in our area down that way, they're going to follow what their neighbors are doing. That's going to be the harder part about it. So, but I think the city should adopt that policy to whatever, if it's going to be Weber Basin's water, you follow Weber Basin's policy on those users. That's my personal opinion.
And we're the enforcement of it.
And I think we're the enforcement, because yeah, they're paying the city for it, but it's just those users. But I think Chris and Public Works has been great. Brian and them, they call all the time when there's an issue with the secondary water. And it's been a joint effort. It's not just been, they get the first call anyway when there's a leak in anybody's system.
Put some teeth on our ordinance, put something, right now, there's nothing there to go out.
Right.
So,
But doesn't.
Yeah, that's the question I think that Haley has.
Yeah.
even if we were basing and we mirror their policy, we're gonna have to go back and adopt an ordinance
Yeah.
and a fine.
Because even secondary waters don't have very stiff fines. I mean, like our fine's $50, $100. I mean, it's not great big fines. But
I
that's
think
not the
it may
point
be
of it
as-
either. It's
Right.
to make money off of fines.
We need to make sure they're enforceable. Like,
That's
our parking fines aren't enforceable. Well, they are, but they don't work. So whatever we do, we need to make sure that,
I think they've already started changing that.
They have.
yeah. There's probably a slippery slope picking certain companies. If you're gonna restrict, better make it across the whole city. Just raise the whole tier rate up. So it really gets, wastewater. But you start picking, it might get a little sketchy picking car washes or just gravel pits or just.
I think the term you're looking for is arbitrary and capricious.
There you go.
But what you say makes sense, right? And it might be worth it to talk to Weber Basin, right? If we get to that point and ask them their recommendation, so to speak, right? It'd still be our decision as a city, what we do with our water users. But since they're the provider for our culinary system as well, we could ask their recommendation. Yeah.
Mhm.
I agree.
But you're pretty much given that those listed in that letter are going to be the restrictions that they have. What's on Weber Basin's water side is going to probably be the restrictions.
I agree.
Yeah, they didn't say it is definitely this yet, because they're holding out hope and crossing fingers, just like we all are, that, they'll get more rain in the forecast, but they've said this is what it will be if things don't change. So we can be prepared that way.
I thought the restrictions were kind of up in the air, but the late start date, is that also up in the air? I thought that was regardless.
No, I think
That-
I don't think it put in the air.
right now, we're talking May 1st, but their thing indicates mid-May now.
Mid-May,
Or did I say May
Yeah,
1st?
May 15th is what. we
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, delayed, on their website, it says delayed charging of secondary system until mid-May
Yeah.
currently.
So I guess considering that most waters aren't going to be coming on until mid-May, you're definitely going to have people watering gardens, trees and shrubs at least from culinary. Perhaps again, just education to the public on things they can do. I mean, I know I have a friend who actually has a 5-gallon bucket in her shower, and while she waits for the hot water to get warm, it's filling up that bucket that she uses later to water her shrubs. Very dedicated, but just some things that they can do if you really want to be conscious of it. Some ideas, something
Well,
that we may want to
That's
offer
a
our
really
residents.
important point too, is that we keep talking about being water wise with outside watering. There's lots of ways to be water wise with inside watering too, and that makes a difference.
Mhm.
Maybe this is a good point or time for me to point out that some of you may or may not know, but the city has a water conservation plan. We're required to have one, and it gets submitted to the Division of Water Resources. This year is our year for an update, and we have already started on that, working with Brian. Given our situation and tonight's discussion, I think it probably merits maybe my suggestion would be committee review of what that is and what the goals are, and maybe taking that a little more seriously.
Yeah, that's traditionally been just a staff project. That hasn't been a council driven project at all. And so basically the recommendation is to have a little bit of council involvement there so that you can see what that water conservation plan really entails.
I know a previous council member asked for a water usage report. Did we ever get that?
Mhm.
We did?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Would you mind sending that out again?
You bet.
Thank you.
Or are you assigning that to a committee, David?
Can't talk yet.
Mayor, are you assigning that to a committee, one of you guys?
What's that?
Brandon's request? Do I need to-
It's
do-
my
do-
fault. I
do I
distracted the
need to
mayor.
remind- That's why I asked you.
So what was your
I
request,
think
Brandon?
that municipal
Updating-
utilities could do that.
Yeah,
At
and that
least-
seems
at
like the
least
most
to just
likely
see the
thing.
work, right?
Right.
Typically that's something that we just do and submit to the state, but just so the council can be aware, have some
Can I
representation.
piggyback on that? That's actually something in PR I've been wanting to do for about a year, was teaching our residents how to conserve water. So after you guys finish municipal, can it come to PR as a way to help the community better understand?
Can I
Right,
piggyback
well-
on your piggyback? Because I'm in both.
Mhm.
Let's do it.
So let me add something here.
You're piggybacking on my piggybacking to her piggybacking?
I am. I guess it's a triple piggyback or quadruple.
Quad,
maybe.
I think we're at now.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
This is recorded.
Right, yes. How many people are watching this? So it used to be, as David suggested, that was, it was just a staff level thing and working internally to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to. But it's now required that it come before you and you accept it and pass it. So the committee, it seems like it would make sense, the committee works together on what those goals would be. It comes to the city council, they approve it, and then once the city council approves it, then maybe PR implements it.
There you go.
Works great.
Smooth.
Okay.
Genius, Brandon, genius.
Wow, genius.
Okay, so with all that being said, I guess we have a very specific question that we want to ask tonight as we've narrowed these down. And that's the question of what do we do with two parks, actually, that we have new landscaping going in scheduled this spring. That is the Posse Grounds, which if you remember a couple years ago with the windstorm, we had an insurance claim on that for needing to rework the sod that got damaged with all the trees that went down. And so that is scheduled to be done here right away. The contractor was ready to go. And then the other is Canyon Meadows Park, which at the end of the fall last year, it became necessary to wait to put the sod in, again, due to drought conditions. But we know that we delayed painting the basketball and pickleball courts because of dust reasons, meaning that when you put that surface down on those courts, if it gets any kind of dust before it is completely done, then it, what's the word? It
Ruined it.
it ruins it. Yeah, I was gonna say something
It
else.
prematurely ages
It
it.
compromises the surface of the court for the life of the court. And so it was very important that we didn't do that. So I think the question is, what do we do with the landscaping there so that everybody knows the sprinkler system is already in place? Decision was made previously to limit the amount of sod that was going to go in that portion of the park anyway. Again, water-wise conversations that took place previously. So I leave that up to the council and what you think and feel as far as what we should do there. Do know that Brandon has had conversations with the contractor out there as far as if we are not able to put landscaping down, put sod down, what are our options for getting the courts painted? There are options for us to try to cover the topsoil out there. Think kind of weed barrier type stuff that you would use as a very temporary type situation to try to keep the dust down while the courts get painted. Not ideal. But again, that's an if we can't do watering, and it sounds like the secondary company is telling us we may still have that option. And that's why I looked to Blair again.
Well, the question is, for how long will we have that option though?
Exactly.
Because if we put it in and then the water restrictions hit, is that grass now just dead? And that's a huge investment on it.
It would just be like every other park.
It's dead.
So
But
What
we
are,
just
what are
found
the
out sod.
landscape companies telling us it takes to, how long does it need to be watered twice a day?
So in talking with Hogan, he felt like that as long as it was relatively warm and I mean, he didn't talk about watering twice a day, and I don't know, Mark Larson's probably more of an expert than I would be, but he talked about it being pretty established within a couple of weeks, at least as far as, the roots taking hold. Now, grass, Mark, I feel like you should be answering this, but grass can be more resilient than it appears. It can look totally and completely dead and still come back the next year. So could you put it in and the rest of this year is bad and it just looks awful, but it still revives next year? Maybe, possibly.
I know on our parks, you can pretty much let them look like a desert. Put water back on them, take care of them a little bit, and they'll bounce back in a few years. And you take a hit, but new sod, I really haven't researched.
So the reason I say that is South River Irrigation was giving them 14 days to water the new sod. That's what we did last year. And that's why I'm struggling, because currently we're at last year's levels in the river. And that water right there isn't going to make it out to the Great Salt Lake. It's going to go to Willard Bay as a storage. It's going to go to different areas. I don't believe South River Irrigation's board will have a problem with you watering for 14 days on new sod and then going to the schedule, if that keeps it alive. I don't know if that keeps it alive.
No guarantee.
The only other side of that is that I get concerned about is the perception.
Sure, there's certainly that. The other thing I'll just throw out is just a little bit of a concern of just about money too. If we were able to roll the dice and come up okay and the grass makes it, then we just spend that money alone. If, on the other hand, we choose to put down some kind of a barrier fabric or something to try to keep the dust down, then we just have to recognize that would be extra money that we would have to spend, and it wouldn't end up doing anything for us except maybe buying us some time.
Well, it's a lot of dirt that's gonna get blown around if we don't do something.
Right, I think you got to do something either way, that's my thinking, is it's either sod or it's some kind of a fabric of some sort. Otherwise, yeah, it'll compromise the courts, but it's also all the adjacent property owners too. I mean, they don't want any of that dust.
What about
Kicking up
magnesium
either.
chloride? I mean, the pits use it. No,
We've talked about that last year.
no.
I mean, it could be sprayed on.
There's a lot of options. I wouldn't go that route though.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, not much grows in it.
How soon can we put sod on?
I don't think that, I think we can do it as soon as we say go.
I mean, do they have sod available? Like if we said, okay, next week, let's get the sod in there?
Problem is you don't have water.
Well, no, I know, but
Right,
the water's okay. I mean, it's cold and the grass is not gonna necessarily die while it's cool. And then when we have the spring rains that might come, you know,
take advantage of those.
take
Sure.
advantage of those.
Why not grass?
But you're saying you're not
Kentucky
gonna have
bluegrass.
secondary water till mid-May.
Mid-May.
Yeah.
I
You can have it
think
before
that,
that.
That district down there could have it before that.
We could have it before that.
Yeah, so I'll put out my thoughts. We put a big investment money-wise down there in the pickleball courts. And even if we put sod down and it dies, you at least have a grass barrier that's gonna be dead, but it's gonna keep the dust and dirt from blowing because it's a carpet. And then at least we are not throwing away the financial investment that's already down there. That's my thought. And if we water it early on, as soon as we can get water to keep it going and get it rooted, then that's that much better. But even if we don't, I think that option's better than, you know, mag chloride or tarps or anything else, because you get a bad wind, it's gonna rip and tear up anything that we put down there.
But it only has to last for 30 days curing period, is that correct? For the court
the
surfaces?
courts, well, I don't think, I think the effect that the dirt could have on the courts goes beyond that. It's not just the cure time. During the cure time is the most vulnerable, but I think the more that it blows on there, you know, and potentially grinds into the surface, I think that's what was being brought up before.
And I don't mean to, I mean, so how did Morgan do their courts then? Because I know we've talked about this and I get it, but I didn't think about it till, I mean, Morgan's new course that you can see right there off the highway, it's just all dirt around those, what do they have, 12 courts there or something? And
I don't know how they did them.
yeah, I don't know. You know that guy up there, I heard.
Oh,
You do?
I don't know.
The city manager?
Oh, Ty, oh yeah, Ty's my friend. He's my golf buddy, right?
We
I-
can absolutely talk to more.
I mean, I've just wondered if there's a different application. I mean, because I don't, and maybe I'm missing it, but I don't think I've even seen any.
So
like
I played
green
on
landscape
courts
around
that
it.
have, you can tell that there was dirt in it when they were finished.
Oh, can you?
And they look filthy.
Oh, and that could be
Like,
what's going on there.
it's
too. I've been
not-
on 'em.
It's not a good product at the end.
Okay.
Well, but again, if there's one that's a shorter cure time, you know, it'd be interesting to see the cost versus, you know, changing to one that has a shorter cure time versus, as long as the quality remains constant.
Right. And I think you could look into all of those things, but I think at the end of the day, you still have to figure out how you're going to cover the dirt.
So my biggest concern is with laying sod, and if we don't know, the answer is if it dies and we can't revive it, then the cost to go and remove all of that grass and then replant would be double what we're looking at currently.
Yeah.
So I think it's really imperative to know if we can revive sod that doesn't get enough water. If that's something that will come back, you know, as other lawns that are mature can come back, or if you're going to go in and have to kill it all, remove it all, and resod, that will be a very large cost.
On timing, because Kentucky blue, the ground temperature has to be 55 degrees. I'm a lawn nut. So that's when it actually starts to come out of dormancy.
So didn't I read in what I think Brandon sent out or whatever, that this has a drought tolerant mixture and it's not just straight Kentucky blue?
Correct, yes.
well, looking down that list though, it's all Kentucky blue.
Is it?
Yes.
And I'm not
Yeah,
a
it's not
grass
rye.
expert, so I didn't.
Like I said, I'm a nerd on
Yeah.
it. The ryes would be great, as we've kind of talked, and we had some reseeding last year that had a lot of the rye in it. But yeah, when I was reading down that list, it doesn't say any of them are more drought tolerant. Some are just more tough for different types of activity on it. So it's a great blend. But yeah, it's still straight KB.
Okay.
And that's another option, I suppose, if you think there's a different supplier or somebody that has a better, more drought tolerant. I think some of those, I thought they indicated that they were more drought tolerant. There's like 5 or 6 different seed types, but they were all the same. You're right. They were in the Kentucky bluegrass family.
So if we continue that pickleball court and just do nothing and play the waiting game, what's the cost to the city in just playing the waiting game?
Are you talking about not doing the surfacing
Yeah,
of the
not
courts?
resurfacing, not doing any more than what we've got.
Well, my concern with, to answer your question, I think Hogan will work with us no matter what. I mean, we need to pay him for the work that they've done.
Right.
But if we just decided, yeah, we're not going to do anything more, then they wouldn't charge us for anything more. I do get concerned about not surfacing the courts, though. That typically on this post-tension concrete, you surface it relatively quickly after you're done. And we chose to wait through the winter already. I just don't want to, I mean, I guess you could surface it later and it might be just fine. I'm just saying typically they don't. I get a little nervous about not doing the surfacing, but it might be fine.
Could we do a zero? Oh, sorry, Mayor, go.
Could we find out? I mean, could we talk to the people that put that down?
I can ask that specific question if there's any problems with the post-tension concrete by not surfacing.
By not servicing it right now.
I mean, it makes it so that we can't use them,
Cracking or something, I don't know.
right?
Well, they really couldn't put any wax on it or anything to slow down the drying of it. They were gonna surface it.
Could we do xeriscaping around it? Because, I mean, realistically, grass right up next to it is going to be unused grass, except maybe when somebody comes out.
There's a walking path around it.
Yeah.
And there's
But-
cement around it.
There's some men around it, but I'm saying there's grass still going up to it. Wasn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Grass.
So,
Yeah.
Up to the sidewalk around the courts, yes.
yeah. I mean, so is there a certain amount of xeriscaping we could do, gravel type around it, that would prevent most of the dust or some of the dust, or? I don't know.
Yeah, any kind of surface you put on there is, it should help to keep the dust down. I mean, if you put some kind of a gravel mulch or something, you would put fabric underneath it.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's an
Yeah,
additional cost. or
I don't
not.
know cost wise what that does.
If we ran the sprinklers on the open dirt to keep the dust down, would that make a difference?
Then you might as well have the grass down.
Right.
Except there's no risk of loss.
Yeah, there's no risk for loss.
Your water district will tell you to turn your water off.
We're not water and dirt. I'm just
Yeah,
throwing out
it
ideas.
drives, I mean, it's a valid thought, but just on the top, just on the dirt, it will dry out pretty quick.
That's why they do the magnesium.
So this
Yeah,
is
well, it
super-
doesn't work. So there you go.
This is super, super hard because we spent so much time on this trying to figure out the best use of landscaping here. And we did talk about xeriscaping, we talked about gravel, and I'm so torn because I want to be able to drink water and take showers, so I don't want to waste it installing sods that may or may not take and it's a waste of water. But that being said, I'm looking at the diagram the reason there is grass around it is because when you have tournaments or whatnot, people do set up shades and they want to be able to watch it, and we don't have any funding for bleachers or anything, so people would be sitting right around the pickleball courts, and if we put gravel there, that's not very comfortable or conducive for
Right.
any seating.
It was even, I mean, it was designed to kind of for that, to have kind of a seating area, you know, around on the south and the east sides. And yeah,
Artificial turf is pretty expensive.
Mhm.
right.
I mean,
Just,
I hear we get mattresses pretty cheap right
85 a day.
now.
Yeah, you could cover that whole area with mattresses.
for perspective, the entire grass area is just over an acre of grass.
So if we're worried about the dust, then, the BMX bike track, is that going to turn around and blow back? So are we still?
So that's been a specific point of conversation as well, and there's a special type of dirt that is going on the surface of that track. And it's a clay type material rather than a topsoil.
Can we put that special dirt on?
It's expensive.
Is it?
And then the
That's
grass
why
is
when
gonna
we
grow
get it
later.
donated,
We
it's
wanted
pretty
to-
big
Well,
deal.
Along that same note, though, we have a huge pile of dirt sitting, I don't know where you call it, in the
North.
train loop.
Oh, yes.
The mountain.
I mean, is that going to be a problem as well?
It could be, but see, those ones you could spray, right? You could,
I just see we'll get some weeds growing on them. I mean, you talk natural vegetation.
yeah. I mean, that
We'll
would,
mow it.
I think there's options for those.
Okay, I just was
to
bringing up,
keep the dirt
I just don't
down.
want us to go, let's say we
Right.
do put the sod in and then all of a sudden now we're going, oh crud, that big pile's blowing on it.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're right.
with both hats on, I would say that we find out if the sod can handle it with just 14 days of everyday watering. Because I'm pretty sure it's every day. When you first initially put it in, most of the time it's 2 days and it's short period of time because they don't want it flooded. And then going to most likely a 2-day-a-week schedule. And then possibly as we get later in the summer, it may go to a 1-day-a-week. We just need to know if the sod farm says it would survive. That type of.
I can look
scenario.
into that. That's a great place to, to talk to them and see what their expert opinion
And
is.
if they thought it would survive, I would be okay with that as from the council member standpoint.
I'd agree. If there's any chance that we can do it, and not go over the secondary regulation as well, yeah, I think we definitely ought to put the grass inside there. I mean, that's what we're waiting for. If we can finish up, then I think it's gonna be the best move.
The Googler says at least 2 months.
It says 2 months.
Watering your sod, your new sod should be watered at least 20 minutes twice a day for a minimum of 2 months.
Yeah.
But
I heard that Google doesn't know anything.
there's 4,000 bees on the Googler, right? Might as well just fish off water long, sure.
So anyway, that would be where I would suggest we start and then,
I like that suggestion. When does that come back to the council though to make this decision? Because it's about sod time.
Yeah,
Well, but we couldn't lay down sod yet until, when are you turning on your water?
well, but
Water
if
master?
it depends on if it needs to, does the water need to be on if at this time of year? So right when they lay it, they usually want to water it.
right.
So it
I
depends
would-
on when that
Our
water company,
system will be charged May 1st.
so we,
Whether we
Couldn't
tell
do it
people they
until
can
May
turn their
1st.
water on or not. And we worked out other scenarios like this with the city before. So our water will be in the system on May 1st,
so that's the earliest we can
possibly
place that.
sooner.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Mhm.
So
That's what I'd plan on.
so realistically, that has the park opening in the fall. By the time sod gets established, courts get sprayed, finished.
Well, I don't know if the sod has to be established for the court.
You just need to keep people off.
Yeah,
of
you
it.
could,
Yeah.
you could rope across there and just say, stay off the grass.
Well, what was it like with the dog park? I wasn't here, so was there a certain time?
We had sod dying because it was getting used and overwatered and,
One section was getting like
We-
4 feet of water.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but they laid that down really
Late,
quick at the
yeah.
end of the fall.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
And only had a few weeks of water.
I don't even know if they
Before
had a
dormant.
full
I don't
month of
I
water.
don't
in
think they
it.
did.
They have to go to culinary for a while.
Mhm.
Well, we can do a little bit of research here to see if the sod, what are the chances the sod can take, how much time it would need, that type of a thing. And then bring that back to the council. If we're ready and we can do it quickly, then maybe we can add that to next Tuesday. If not, then it would probably be April 12th.
so to our last, are we done, or?
I'm done.
Okay, to our last question about enforcing 18 months, to have a yard completed from move-in date. That was our last question, right?
So last year, we delayed that. We didn't hold people to that, again, due to the watering restrictions. I think that we probably should do the same thing and just say that is not going to be enforced, that be due to the restrictions. And if Weber Basin does come out specifically and say no new landscaping, then I think that makes our choice for us.
If Weber
Yeah, I
Basin
agree.
comes out and says no new landscaping, do we do our landscaping at the park?
Well, again, the Weber
Well-
Basin restrictions are different than the.
True, but we just talked
secondary
about kind
company.
of getting all on the same page and just following what Weber Basin suggests.
And
So-
perceptions, I know.
And perception. So I'm a little hesitant to be like, you can't put it in a yard, we will.
I totally am with you, and I'm struggling because this was like so much work to get the park to this point. And
I
it's
just-
so
I-
hard because I don't want people to feel like we're like, we gotta do this and you can't. But on the other hand, it's like, we're using your money. Do you want us to
Yeah.
use it? Right? Or,
I just think that's one nod to the uniqueness of each secondary water company, not pushing them too closely to whatever Weber Basin unless that's what they want to do. But again, just if you get them all on the same page, then that makes it a little bit more difficult for us to have that leeway. You know, if one watering company feels comfortable doing it, I don't want to say, nope, you got to do what Weber Basin is saying. So.
He's trying to get us an answer right now.
well, okay.
Well,
I do have a question I can ask, but he
That's
stepped out of the
decisive.
room. So where we did delayed that 18 months, is that something that, like a measure or resolution that we need to do, or is that just something that we just say, we're just gonna look the other way right now?
Essentially.
I think it's just, last year we just did it as a policy and we didn't enforce it.
Okay,
So is it removing the requirement that it has to be done so people still can do it? Or is it saying you may not do it? Because the way it's written here, it says, should the city still require all landscaping for new homes be in 18 months? If we don't require it, seems like they still have the option.
Well,
Water available.
You're absolutely right. There's a distinction there. And I think what we're suggesting right now is that we would allow it. The question is, will the secondary companies allow it?
Right.
And if they say no new landscaping, then I think that tells us that we shouldn't require it,
Correct.
because then we're not in alignment.
Just so everybody understands, we're not trying to be different than like Weber Basin. The hard part is people on the west end and people even this way, they own their water shares. Weber Basin is basically renting them water by usage. And
Right.
so to go to a person who says, I own so many CFS, you can't tell me what I can and cannot do with it.
Yeah.
We're walking a very fine line
Right.
of what they can and can't do. And so that's why I hesitate saying we are not, that we will follow Weber Basin to the T, but
exactly.
how do I go to a landowner that says you can't put in sod, you do own water, and
And
when
that's
you own
exactly-
it, you
yeah.
own it. You own a certificate, a piece of paper that says you own it. You have that title to it. And it's very hard. And that's where the state differs on how they don't understand that process. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's a perception thing, but I almost guarantee you that our water district will be different than Weber Basin.
Well, and that's
will
what
be.
that's what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
is I think we need to leave room for each water
Yeah.
district to make their own rules and not get everybody on the same
Yeah.
page.
I mean, I think it's good if we can meet and we can talk about it and we can get on the same watering schedule. I know none of us are going to get all the way to Weber Basin's level because they've gone above and beyond it to this, in my opinion at this point.
Even if we're able to just get them all in the same room
Mhm.
and they tell us what their restrictions
Yeah,
are.
no,
and
that's what I
we
think is
become
good.
an information outlet.
Mhm.
Um, But
Agreed.
yeah, us trying to tell them what their restrictions should be doesn't
Yeah,
make sense.
agreed.
The
But I-
other comment though I have is, the perception versus education. If the secondary water for Canyon Meadows allows us to be able to water, while the rest of the secondaries are not allowed to, they have the restrictions. At this point, barring hearing what they say, I would educate the people and go ahead and water and get the park in, rather than us not use it, let the park go to waste for a year, and then hope that things are better next year. But again, we're not making a decision here tonight. That's just my feelings about it. I'd rather educate the public and help them understand why that watering is taking place down there, if that's allowed. Because we have a big investment down there and we'd like people to use that park sooner than have it sit around like a ghost town for another year.
It is for the general public, so it's not like the city's just some, entity sitting over here, So I do view the city a little bit different than just an individual property owner.
And it gives those people who can't put landscape in the opportunity, somewhere to go.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
Yeah, if we're able to get that information out and like you say, educate the best that we can so that there's an understanding of that nuanced difference, that can be great. But if we're unable to do that, then perception is that we're bucking the rules, and that's not what we're doing. We're trying to follow the rules, and there are unique rules in South Weber in various locations, and so one park, even our own park, may be different in Cherry Farms or Cedar Cove than what Canyon Meadows is going to be. And so we'll do the best we can to help explain those type of differences.
And I think most people will
will.
understand the dilemma that
Yeah.
we're sitting in and understand why we're doing the things the way that we're doing.
and Quinn, on your question on, like, the water districts are also encouraging no new landscapes, if possible, the ones that choose to do it. We just haven't, we just said, then you're doing it at your own risk. Because we did have to turn water off last year early, and people had just put it in. And I can tell you, the lady around the corner from us, their lawn died completely, 100% dead. But they maybe got 2 or 3 days of water on it, is all.
So when we keep talking about risk with the sod, how much risk are we talking?
That's a good question.
What's their sod cost, Brendan?
Total with sprinkler, I don't remember.
Oh, don't do it with sprinkler. That's a
Sprinkler's
big
already in,
big
right?
number.
But I don't know. It
Oh.
was just a total with both.
Yeah,
But
I
the
don't remember.
sprinklers in
double.
already, right?
Sprinklers
Right.
already in.
Right.
We could look at how much is left on their schedule to bill.
I mean,
For that line item.
I will, I'll talk to who, our supplier and see what they feel like the risk is on.
That would be a
On the
good,
sod.
that'd be a good thing to know. All right. You bet.
As I'm sitting here thinking about this, I'm thinking to myself, people don't like to be told what to do. It's very, very hard for people to swallow that. And so I understand where you guys are coming from because I'm sitting here listening to you in this meeting. And so somehow, some way, I feel like our residents need to understand this whole conversation here and how everything is coming about, because they'll drive down the street and see that Veterans Park is being watered and immediately criticize.
Yep.
But they don't understand the watering schedules and this and that. So I really think if there's any way that you can spell it out for the residents and say, these are the districts, this is, the watering, this is the schedule, and this is this area or whatever, and just basically everything you've talked about here, somehow getting that information to them so that people understand the reason why you don't want them to do this.
I completely.
If you just come out and say, don't water but once a week, they're
I-
going to be defensive.
And I think the more in front of it we get, the better. The sooner we get it to them, the better.
I think that's the reason we had this meeting tonight, was to do that and do just like Michelle said. We've got to make them aware exactly why we're doing what we're doing and why they may see something that they may not understand. You know, let's help them understand and know exactly why. That's why we're doing this meeting tonight, I think, is to compile all that and then get that out to the city.
I can tell you as staff, we will put out everything we can and we will do the best we can of sharing information. I know that these are the types of conversations that don't always get to everybody, right? And so there will be questions, there will be criticisms.
It's still going to be, but
Right.
we can minimize that.
I think
And
even
that's
just like
why
an FAQ, like, why is this part getting watered and I can't, or whatnot, just those common questions that will
You know,
come up will be
if
helpful.
we're watering different days than the rest of the city's watering, let's tell them why we are, all of those things we want to get out.
That's why we have a really good PR committee.
Heck, yeah.
That's
We
right.
need video. We need video.
Okay, so I
Daily
apologize for
video.
stepping out for a minute, but I called Farron Calder, and I think most of you know who Farron Calder is. He's a landscape person, and he's retired now, but I called him and asked him what he felt on putting this sod down. And he said that if we put it down, he says the main thing that you've got to make sure is that it stays wet long enough for it to start growing together. He says the worst thing you could do is let it dry. He says, and even if you just let it dry once or twice, he says it's going to shrink and pull away. And you've seen sod that's got gaps, 1.5-inch gaps. And he says, you get that, and then you've got real problems. So he says, you've got to make sure that that stays wet long enough for that to take hold. And he says, you're looking at least a real good month for that to do. He said, then he wanted to know who was doing the sod. And I said, Bulldog, is that where we're getting at?
Yeah, Bulldog is the sod supplier and Western Landscaping is the
So
installer.
he knew Bulldog real well. He says, I know the owner of Bulldog. I'll call him right now and see what he recommends or what he thinks. And he said, I'll call you right back. Keep your phone by you. And he hasn't called back. So maybe he can't catch him, but he will find that out and then let me know. But he said he feels like if we can get it well along for a month or 2 months, he says, and then we get restricted on water to where we can only water once a week the rest of the season, he thinks that it would come back and be okay.
So is watering just 2 times a week up until those first 2 months, would that be adequate? Or does it
Well,
need
he
more than
says
that?
the first 30 days, you're gonna have to water about
Twice a
every
day. It's
Twice a day,
twice,
every day.
it's short. I mean, you don't water for 30, 40 minutes like you do a normal cycle. You're watering for 15 minutes and then 15 minutes
Twice a
so
day,
that
every
it stays wet. It's still about the same amount of water as one long cycle, but they want it wet.
all the time.
And so that's what
So keep in mind then 2 months is July.
Right.
yeah. Pray for rain.
It's just would be nice if we knew how wet our March was going to be, wouldn't it? And our April. That would be really, really
You
helpful
don't have
right
that
now.
information.
Don't, and I wish I did.
How early can the secondary start?
May 1st.
April
First.
15th?
Legally April 1st, but no, you're not getting it April 1st. That's a discussion we're having as a board on next Thursday.
So to the earlier question about how much it costs, I found a note from our sprinkler sod total was $130,000. So I don't know what the
But
breakdown
a big
is on
chunk of
that.
that I thought was,
Total is 116.
116 is what it came in at.
Yeah.
So lion's share is the system, right?
I thought that's what we talked about, but
Yeah.
I really
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know.
you might be 60, 70,000 for the sprinklers. And they're,
One thing to keep in mind, this is technically borrowed money from our impact fees. So if it doesn't take and we have to tear it up, there isn't really money.
We're just gonna keep spreading that ARPA funding around.
We do have a wrap tax now. We didn't before, but
Do you want me to get pricing for doing something else, like putting down some fabric or something like that, so you know how much you're looking at if you don't do the sod?
I think it wouldn't hurt. I think it'd be good to at least have an estimate of what it would be to, yeah, whether it's putting down some type of material or whether it's just changing it to some other type of gravel or something. I mean, it's,
So long as it's effective.
yeah, I mean, in reality, what we're saying is we're doing this all for the pickleball courts, is so that they can get sealed. So I think primarily, if we can find something or have something that has a better cure time on it, and I don't know if that's out there, that would be first. And then if not, then I think at this point, we need to look at every option because decisions will be made based on water in another couple of weeks to a month. So everyone else okay with that?
I'm good with that. I would like to know
What
if
about, oh, what
if
about?
we
the
do
posse
nothing to
ground?
that pickleball court, you know, what's it gonna do to the surface? when
Yeah,
we
I
do
can
put
look into
on?
that as well.
Yeah.
So,
How much sod, or do we have, is it just sod or is it sod and sprinklers that have to be done at this?
There's a lot of sprinklers, the sprinklers are pretty, the fire pit's about done. First one's skim coat it, level it up, resod it. We got.
How much sod is this?
It's
Just a
All
little
the
bit.
sod, everything.
Just all the sod that was over by
Well,
the. south
not
of the-
quite as big as
or
this
north
room.
of the bathroom.
Yeah, probably a little bigger than that, because we're doing the whole thing, we got insurance money to, where all those trees tipped over and like the big ruts and stuff.
When, they talked like that was getting ready to be done very soon.
I told them all. They're
Well,
working on it.
are they okay putting sod down in this weather?
He was just gonna get all the sprinkler system, everything ready to go, and as soon as the sod hit, hold him off, not knowing if there's.
Well, that's what I mean, are they okay putting the sod down in their mind before the water is on?
No, I think he was gonna wait.
He was gonna wait.
He was just
Oh, he was
prepping
gonna
for it.
wait.
He was just gonna get it all ready.
I think you got the same problem. I mean,
Yeah.
if we put it down right now, we don't have
Yeah.
water,
Yeah, he was
and but
gonna,
we end up having 2 weeks of real warm weather, and we shrink that sod.
yeah, well, he wasn't gonna put the sod
Right
down
away.
until the water came on, but he's getting
Right,
everything else
right.
done. But if we're not gonna put down sod, there's no reason to put down
To
the
do anything
topsoil,
else.
smooth it out, and put the new heads in, and
Well,
don't
the
even think-
largest,
I think it was as iffy as it is, and we don't need that. I don't think we should do that.
that's fine.
But the posse ground, I say let's just hold off on the posse ground. I mean, the only reason we're considering doing this other is the options that we talked about. You know, the posse ground, can't see the impact over there. That's my opinion.
unless it's a significant cost to delay it. Like contractually, I mean,
No.
I don't know what you,
No, not really.
Is that gonna be
He's just
in,
gonna charge for what he gets done, he's gonna pour the fire pit,
sorry.
and that, and then, just pull off.
is that gonna affect Country Fair Days at all? I know they use some grassy area. I can't remember which.
It's gonna be rough grass, but that's what it was last year.
Okay.
Maybe.
Hold for now.
I'm still waiting.
I mean, you'll have water. I just don't know. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that.
Yeah.
I can tell you what's definitely gonna happen. If we choose to postpone this, well, we're gonna have a very, very wet March and April. If we choose to go forward with it, we will be 70 degrees until May 1st.
Let's decline it then.
Well, maybe we trim the plastic ground to 0 feet for a
Right now.
like the basic start, show them how to do it.
And I would be okay with that too.
Do something down there different, start changing the mindset. Like, I don't know, showing them what we can do.
That's an option to actually maybe look into.
Well, that's why I was saying with the Canyon Meadows, I mean, as much of that as if we did find the cost not to be prohibitive, I mean, that's something that's less that we have to even keep taking on, but I don't know. And one question, if I don't know if anyone knows it, with sod, when is the earliest we could get it? Because ground's frozen right now. So. Mhm.
I don't know, but it'd have to be after I mean, you can't be getting a deep frost at night.
Yeah, the east has some, well, like have some in North Ogden and some over here, but I don't know if the big places or not, I don't know.
Farron did say that it depends on what sod company you're using and what type of soil that sod's been grown in too. So. Anyway,
To get an answer.
I kind of got an answer of posse grounds, hold off. Do something different with posse grounds than grass.
I agree.
Yeah.
So do you want to go through all your questions, and make sure they all got answered? We're all in agreement of the answer that you heard versus what we said.
Okay. How do we support the secondary water companies, education, and follow their rules?
And try to pull them together to find out.
And create or try to facilitate a meeting. As far as how should the city proceed with watering city parks, other facilities, is follow the restrictions. Follow the secondary water company restrictions in the various locations. How do we treat those residents who are not on secondary systems and must use culinary for outside purposes? Try to follow Weber Basin.
And education.
And education. And then should the city require all landscaping for new homes be installed within 18 months? No. And Canyon Meadows, get some more information, see if we can get the sod down depending on what we get. And then Posse Grounds, no, do something different than grass.
It's an hour and a half discussion, summed up.
and we can still do grass at Posse Ground, just not do it now, can't we? I mean,
And if we end up having a decent month or so, I mean, there's no reason to restrict like this.
but
I know there's
So
other
the answer
reasons.
is wait a month or two on the Posse Grounds and then make the decision.
and we want to make sure the residents understand that the water, both systems, culinary, secondary, are all from the same pond.
Yeah.
Come from the mountain.
Yeah, under the education section, right, because that was kind of across the board. I wrote down a couple of thoughts, right? All come from the same source. The idea of not using culinary for outside purposes. Weber Basin links to all types of ways to be water wise inside and out, those types of things.
Anything else, anyone? Ready to close this down? Wants to
Mayor, make a motion to. What am I doing? Adjourn. I was gonna say close the meeting. I'm like, that's not it. Adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.